We're recording on Sunday. Tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day, national holiday, although I suspect Donald Trump would like to have that repealed. And then, of course, the day after that is the first anniversary of his inauguration for his second term. Can't think of a greater contrast in what this America is all about.
Well, absolutely. I always spend Dr. King's holiday with the MLK Commission in Lansing. They have the largest luncheon in the country, and always come out feeling inspired and hopeful. One of the big parts is they have essays by each of the kids around essay contests for scholarships for kids around the Lansing area, and listening to those kids talk about their vision of the future and their hope for the future always to me is a very powerful thing. And to counteract this to what we're seeing now, which is a rise of authoritarianism and the constant dog whistles, and really the handing to the most powerful more power and more money while the rest of the people suffer. And it's the exact opposite of what Dr. King's message was. And so, um, I will look to being inspired on Monday, and then Tuesday, I continue to go to work to make sure that we fight back against everything this administration is doing.
Yeah, if Monday is the yin, Monday is the yin, then Tuesday is the yang. And certainly no better representation of what the president has been doing to this country than his appearance in Detroit in the last few days. He literally flipped off the state.
The idea that we would have an American president who would tell to flip off and to tell to fuck off an American auto worker, while at the same time, by the way, Walt, talking about bringing in Chinese companies to compete with our American companies, at the same time. So, I mean, really, he's been telling the working class people to fuck off this entire administration. I mean, what he's done with healthcare costs and promising to solve problems and not trying for them, and been focused on foreign entanglements and the investment in billionaires and millionaires and not actually our healthcare system. He's already been doing that. This was actually like almost like a perfect sum up of the first year of the Trump administration, that he has consistently told people that he said he was going to be on their side to go fuck off. How much I assume that we're allowed to say that on the podcast, those words on the podcast. I mean, we're just quoting the president at this point. It was an action that I thought was emblematic of who he is, to be honest with you.
But then he went in and gave a speech to the Economic Club of Detroit, and he told auto executives who know better that the tariffs have been great. He told everybody who knows better that grocery prices are going way, way down. I do the grocery shopping for our family, and I know for a fact grocery
Me
prices
too.
ain't going down. We haven't had a good steak in a long time. And then it was on and on and on, a whole bunch of gibberish. And the fact checkers, somebody said, probably are suffering from PTSD at this point just from that speech.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, you have to remember, this is the same, trip to the same trip to the economic club where he said that the whole nation would look like Detroit if he didn't win the election last time. Nothing's got better for people in the city of Detroit or the rest of the nation. So, what I would say is that what we're looking at is a president who is out of touch, clearly, with what's actually happening in America. And the promises have been broken to people across the state and across this country, and I think they'll hold them accountable in 2026.
One other outrage from the Trump administration of many, we could do a daily podcast just on this outrages, but certainly the situation in Minneapolis has gone from horrible to horrific. It's gotten to the point now where you got Kristi Noem saying, basically, in this country, if ICE demands, you've got to show your papers. And that sounds like a line right out of a World War II movie.
I saw a conservative on Facebook that said that, um, well, it doesn't affect me because I'm a citizen. and first of all, we all know that's true. We saw that in what happened to someone who was, in peaceful civil disobedience that got shot. But at the same side of that, what I would say is that everybody believes that until it comes for them. And when we start actually taking away the rights of people, we start ignoring the Constitution, and when we start saying that the president has the extra powers because you agree with what he does with, and it's okay if he violates the Constitution, that's fine and dandy until it comes for you. And I think that this is a test, right? It's a test on how far that they can go. Um, I don't know if you saw Governor Wall's speech on what's actually happening there, but when I watched it, it's terrifying to think about what's happening, and especially when you realize how untrained these people are. And so one of the big things that I watched this week was a journalist who has been anti-ICE and had no qualifications whatsoever go through the ICE hiring process and got all the way to the point where she was hired. Had never done all the things they asked her to do, had no real vetting. I mean, if they just Googled her, they would know they were making a mistake. And they sent her an offer letter and gave her a hire date.
After a 6-minute interview.
I mean, think about it for a second. I mean, we are giving people, um, authority, guns, and sending them out onto our streets and saying that they're law enforcement with almost nothing of a background check whatsoever. And if that tells you where we're headed, I mean, that is a very, very scary place to be in America. I have enormous amount of respect for our police around the country. But in order to be a police officer, the amount of background checks and training and all those things that you have to do before you're ever put out on the street is tremendous. And they're so desperate to find people to go into these communities that they are basically not even doing even what would be considered a minimum vet. I mean, we hire interns at the Democratic Party. Well, we check their social media. You know what I mean? Like when the idea that you would do none of that and give somebody a hiring date is really crazy, especially with the authority they're giving. It's not just the fact that it's a violation of the Constitution and taking someone's rights. It's also giving authority to someone who should not have it, that puts all of us in danger. And I think that if anybody who watched what happened in Minneapolis can, that is not how law enforcement is trained. That's not how de-escalation happens. That's not how any of those things happen. And putting those people in our communities puts us all at risk. And I don't care if you have your papers or not. I don't carry around a passport when I'm driving around Michigan. I don't have my birth certificate with me everywhere I go. It's ridiculous. But no one will ever pull me over because of what I look like. And that's why it's different. But at the point where you have untrained people in our communities, it does not matter if you're the target. And each one of us is at risk. And so, I thought it was pretty sad to see a conservative out there saying, well, it won't come to me. Well, when it does, I'll stand up for your rights too. But at this point, we're going to stand up for the people in Minneapolis.
Let's move on to some practical politics and get away from the storm for a while, a different kind of a storm, and that's within the Democratic Party on how the presidential nominating process is going to go in 2028. In the last cycle, Michigan was one of the first primary states, rather than ceding it to Iowa and New Hampshire, which certainly really aren't kind of representative of the demographics of the Democratic Party. You want Michigan up front. There's a dozen other states that are saying the same thing. What's the case for Michigan?
So first of all, I'm not asking for us to be first. I want us to be in the early window. And I think that's important to acknowledge because I honestly think it's more important to be somewhere in the front where we're actually winning down the candidates. What I would tell you is that in the Midwest, we are the only battleground state that applied, which I think is important. Which means every investment that we make on the ground in the primary will be useful in the general election. And I think that's a really important thing that the Democratic Party considers when they're making these decisions. That at the end of the day, you want these early investments are actually good for the general as well. So that's the first thing. Second of all, we are the most diverse state, both racially, geographically, religiously. It is hard economically. It would be impossible to argue that Michigan isn't the most diverse state, those that are applying in the early window as well. We also have the best party infrastructure of any state. We have a full-time voting protection unit. We're one of a handful of states that has that. We have full-time organizers of the ground in all these communities. So we have the ability to organize and get this right on the primary level as well. We're lucky to have a very large staff that is in these communities doing the work already. And I think so when you add up like which state parties are ready, which states we need to win the presidential election at the end of the day, which states look like America, and Michigan certainly does. There's no argument of us not being in the early window. So, we put out a strong application. Had strong support from our electeds, but also from labor organizations, and I think we have a good argument to make as we head in.
Is the fact that we've got 3 congressional districts that are realistically potentials to flip out of
Absolutely.
Michigan's 13 members.
Yeah. No, I think we have three that can flip. And I always tell people that this year, who knows? If there was a time to spread the map and, you know, push for more and to not rest on your laurels, this is that time. And I talked to the state house about that, the state senate about that, the congressional committees about that. I think when you really look at it, too often, and I've been a victim of this as before as well. When I ran the Senate campaigns, you look at a district and go, "Oh well, can the numbers shift that much?" And the answer is, if you're looking across the country, we're seeing shifts that are significant. When you look at recent polling in Michigan, it shows the enthusiasm way higher on our side. And so I think we got to stop. We got to stop starting from the process of we can only win this, and look at the map in a more creative way of when you have talented candidates that are working on the ground, when you have good field teams, when you have candidates that are uniquely different in places you can win elections. And the reason that's important is for two reasons. One, it's the only chance you might have to win some of these seats. And two, I look back at Kelly Rossman, who ran for Senate against Tom Barrett. Now, she didn't end up winning that election. Reality was we won the most seats since Watergate, though, and a big reason was because of the hard campaign she ran. Republicans had to spend more. Republicans had to actually work in a district that they didn't assume that they were going to have to beforehand. And so when we look at all these seats across the state, we got to widen the map a little bit, look at actually what the potentials are, because there are advantages both in the opportunity to win and also the opportunity to keep them busy.
Chairman, thank you so much. Let's enjoy the national championship football game and hope that next year that there's a Michigan or a Michigan State playing in that game.
They never know. Look at where Indiana was.
I just look at Michigan and Michigan State basketball right now, and it can be a fun winter for us.
So in the Ken Palm numbers that what people judge these teams by, Michigan State passed Michigan as a number one team in the country on defense yesterday. So now we are the number one team in the country with the analytics, and I think watching them play, they're a pretty damn good defense. So I'm excited.
And we should
I'm excited.
remember the women at both of those universities are also rated in the top 15.
In women's basketball, in men's basketball, and in hockey, it's a really exciting time actually right now for the Spartans, and surely at the Michigan Wolverine level as well.
So you can kind of grudgingly admit that too.
Western Michigan's got a pretty good hockey team as well, so that's good.
Okay.
But I have a kid at Western, so go Broncos.
Cheers.